My server's down.
Your server's down. Talk to Donna. So the one thing I am asking for this year, because it would help me greatly, is that as you type them out in our Arial font size 12. If everything is consistent, I just have to cut and paste.
Is that in your message?
It is in the message. It's in the message, it's in the peer evaluations, it's out there.
Keep them in the order that they come in so that they can parallel across.
Please, okay, what he's trying to tell you is please do them alphabetically. So, you know, good old Jason, we're gonna pick on Jason. Everybody start with Jason except for Jason. And just go alphabetically with them. It does, you're gonna save me time and energy. And I really appreciate it. The way this time is going right now, it's been quite interesting if we all survive this week. As you know, because of everything that happened over the weekend for the community, Bishop Bradley had already planned on doing a 12:10 Mass on Monday. So that worked out really well, but the diocesan staff walked in the door and it was just go. Just let's get this done. All of the things that had to be taken care of for the liturgy, ushering because there were going to be so many people, making sure that the media was taken care of because they had ABC, CNN, Channel 8, Channel 3, Channel 10. There were all kinds of people coming in and lots of details to take care of in a short period of time. And we made it. We were all still alive and breathing by 1 o'clock. But it's just consistently, everything is happening with all of this. There's another, that other meeting was today. Yeah, good?
Yes. I probably had close to 200 people there, it looked like.
Yep, they're expecting the crowds just to keep getting larger. Next week they have Lakeshore on Monday. They have the next one in the Central Deanery on Tuesday. They're doing it at Bard Hall because of the numbers that they think that they're going to have. So it's a good thing. Things are going well with them, but it's just constant movement. The diocesan staff is moving into the first stage of the training to prepare for all of this with the Catholic Leadership Institute. So tomorrow, all of us have an all-day training. And then the next 2 days after that, anyone who is on, and thank God I'm not, did I say? Anyone who's on the teams that will be going out to the parishes have the next 2 days of training. And then it's just going to keep moving from there. Have yet to hear about that day in May. I know it's coming. I just, as soon as I get the date in May, when they're going to open this up to the laity, I will let you know so we can get that scheduled in. Any questions, concerns about anything that's going on?
Are there particular schedules for the Holy Door when it's open?
The Holy Door is open when there's Mass. And what?
It wasn't when we were there exactly.
Really?
Because I asked Monsignor and he said, no, but I can go open before.
Well, the best way to tell you this is, if I had St. A's phone number, I'd give it to you. Call St. A's. Because if it's not open, they'll be happy to make arrangements for that as well. So yeah, in all of that's going on, we don't want to lose the fact that this still is the year of mercy, even though we're all on our knees begging for mercy right now from what's going on. Anything else? You could give it to John.
Sure.
345-5147.
What's the area code?
269.
Oh, and Jason's gonna
For you.
bore you.
Never.
So we've reached a turning point in Spanish.
chapter 40. So forget everything you know about English, because it's going to make it a lot easier. So Spanish, and a lot of other languages like it, use a conjugation system. And the conjugation system is universal. So if you learn Latin, it's going to be the same. If you learn Spanish, it's the same. French, it's going to be the same. So if you learn Latin in grade school and you know mo, ma, samat, it's the same idea. And we're learning that right now. The 6 conjugations that we have are the singular and the plural. There's the I, the you, the he, she, it, and then the plurals. There is the we, they, and sorry, we, y'all, and they. Now, y'all is not something we have in the northern part of the country, right? It's very commonly used in the south, and it actually is correct. As weird as y'all sounds, when you're speaking in Latin or Spanish, you don't say y'all, of course. You say vosotros, but it's the same meaning. It actually means everybody in total that we're speaking to, that we're addressing in that person. So that's what we're dealing with right now. We're dealing with that. And the reason I want to mention something is because what our book doesn't do is it doesn't explain how you get from English to the Spanish. So in English, very simply, the word run, okay? If you want to use it with yourself, you say I run. If you want to use it with a single person, you say you run. You could say he runs. You can go on and say we ran, we run. Whatever you want to do, you continue to use the word the same way. You change the pronoun that's in front of it. In Spanish, you don't do that. The verb stays the same for everything. Instead of being the word in front of it being changed, the verb changes. So run, the main word is correr, C-O-R-R-E-R. If you're using it as a noun or anything like that, you use that form of it. But when it's used as a conjugation, it changes. So the first person is corro. And that's going to be the case for every first person verb. If you want to say sleep, cansado, you put that O at the end. Every verb is going to end with an O, with the exception of like 5 or 6 weird words. So every word in Spanish that is of the first person singular ends in an O. The second person, which is the you, single person, ends in ES. So in the case of run, it's corres. Okay? And the third person, I brought this just so I don't mess it up. The he, she, or it is correct. Or sorry, correct, so an E. Okay, so that's what we're learning right now is, again, we're taking just one verb and learning how to say it in 6 different ways. And there's a fantastic resource. It's sold by Barron's. It's called 501 Spanish Verbs. And what it contains in there is the conjugations of all these verbs. So you look up the word run, and it says run means corre. So you find corre in the book, and then it lists it actually lists 9 ways, because we have different forms of conjugations, but that doesn't matter, you're not there yet. And so it lists those ways that you do that, and that's really going to be helpful, because a lot of you said you don't know how to say some of the basic things, which is true, right? We walked out of Spanish class, it was wonderful, we learned prayer, we learned that, but like if we see the word corre, we don't know what that means if it appears in different ways and whatnot. So that's what they're trying to teach us in the conjugations. Like I said, forget everything you know about English and just, realize that Spanish, Latin, French, all those languages are actually the ones that have the good system, and English is the one that acts crazy. So the 3 words are yo, is the same as I, and then vos, or tu, is the same as you. Vos is the same as he, she, or it. Right? So if you say yo something, it's I something. If you say tu something, it's you something. Right? So yo corro is I run, and then tu corres is you run. It works out the way. You always keep the verb the same, and then you just change that little pronoun based on what it is. So if that's helpful, great. If not, forget everything I just said. If nothing else, it delayed the quiz. So, so the other thing too is that if you don't have that book available, and that's fine, if you just go online and type in Spanish conjugation, type a verb in, it'll show you how it's taken apart. And that's really helpful because your vocabulary learning is cut by 6. You know, because all of a sudden when you learn one word, it just is 6 different ways that it appears. So if you learn those 6 ways that any verb happens, you see a word that's C-O-R-R, you know it means some form of verb. And so when you read that word, if you just take the ending, you know what it means then. And it's a really easy way to build your vocabulary up and whatnot. So I mentioned that because that's about to haunt us in this book. So everything that we're going to do from this point on relies on that. And the book wasn't as clear. So like I said, plenty of resources that I can share if you need them and whatnot. So, all right, sorry, quiz time.
Jason, what was
Thank you, Jason. Could you go over that again, Jason?
the name of the book?
It's by Barrons, B-A-R-R-O-N-S, and it's 501 Spanish verbs.
Thank you.
And they have it for every language.
Are we done yet? We're on Canon 367. No, 376, a little dyslexia. Talks about bishops, and they're either diocesan or they have a title, they're titular bishops. Okay, we're most familiar with diocesan bishops. We don't have personal prelators running around this part of the country for the most part. We don't have bishops that are assigned to dioceses that no longer really exist, but because they're a cardinal, they have some diocese in Rome that doesn't do anything.
Wasn't Bishop Sheen at some point towards the end of his life a titular bishop?
Probably was. I don't know, was he?
I think so. I just,
Yeah.
that wasn't
Yeah. 370, I'm not going to read all the rest of that stuff. It talks about how they elect bishops in the remaining 377. Talks about having the turnus, which is nothing more than a list of names that are submitted. We've talked about this once before. There's so many names on file with the legate in case, the pontifical legate in the event that see becomes vacant. These names are presented to the apostolic see, and somewhere along the line somebody gets appointed a bishop. 378 deals with qualifications of the candidacy for bishop, and you can read the 1, 2, 3, and 4. I would say that you might want to know that he's got to be at least 35 years old. He's got to have been ordained to the presbyterate for at least 5 years. He must possess a doctorate or at least a licentiate in either sacred scripture, theology, or canon law from an institute of higher studies approved by the apostolic see, or at least truly expert in the same disciplines. Any more questions on that one? Okay, 381. 381 is diocesan bishops, it says, have all power except as reserved to the supreme pontiff. It gets into some more definitions. It says all ordinary, proper, and immediate power, which is required for the exercise of his pastoral functions. Certain things are reserved to the supreme pontiff. But that doesn't mean that Pope Francis is going to come over here and tell Bishop Bradley how to run his diocese. They are, as we've spoken of earlier, even the Metropolitan will not come into another diocese, even if it's one of his suffragan dioceses, and tell them what to do. Kind of like being first among equals again. Now there are certain circumstances where Rome will intervene, you know, if something goes drastically awry. But for the most part, he's the man, he's got all the power. 382 deals with how the bishop takes canonical possession of his diocese. Just because Rome appoints him, he doesn't become bishop with his power until he actually takes possession of it. And the ins and outs of doing that are laid out in 383. Any questions on that? Moving right along. Okay, 384 to 402 deals with the obligations of a diocesan bishop. We may find this a little easier to follow if we look at our buddy Corden and look at page 82 through 85, because we don't have to read through all the canons that way. And the first thing it starts out and says is that a priest, once named a diocesan bishop, must be ordained a bishop unless he is already a bishop. So that would be a case where Bishop Bradley, probably not Bishop Bradley, but let's say a bishop has been appointed here, he's the bishop, he's been a bishop for 10 years, and they say, oh, we got an opening in St. Louis, we'd like you to take that opening. He gets a letter from the Supreme Pontiff telling him that he's to become an Archbishop of St. Louis. He doesn't have to be reordained a bishop, he's already a bishop. Bishop Bradley is a good example because he was ordained a bishop as the auxiliary of Pittsburgh. So when he came here, there was no ordination. It was merely taking possession of his diocese. Now he does that at Mass, and they hold up the papal bull. And if you're sitting in the back row, I'm sure you can't read it. If you're sitting in the front row, I'm sure you can't read it. They walk around with it. It looks good. It's a nice ceremony. But I'm sure somebody there's read it. I never read them. I don't have a reason. He has to present it to the College of Consultors, and it should take place within a liturgical celebration in the cathedral church. Then he can exercise, as soon as that happens, he can exercise his authority. So they do this usually right around the time of the homily, and if he wanted to, he could walk out and issue a decree. Or not even walk out, walk to the podium, to the ambo, and issue a decree. He is the bishop at that point. Now they don't do that because they don't have to. Then it talks on, got the right page here, let me go on. Is there anything else important here? Okay, the diocesan bishop, mid-page 84, says he has 3 more traditional duties. He must be present to his diocese. He's obligated to reside within the diocese for at least 11 months of the year and to be actively involved in his ministry. So, is he going to be living in his house 11 months of the year? No, not really. That means he's not on vacation for 11 months of the year. But he might be at the Conference of Bishops in Washington. He might be on an ad limina visit to Rome. He might be everywhere. He could be anywhere. But generally he doesn't leave the diocese except to do something that he needs to do. He could be sitting in ecumenical council. He could be at a synod of bishops, a number of things. It says he must visit the parish and other institutions of the diocese at least once every 5 years. He is conduct a pastoral visitation. It is a chance to hear the people and to evaluate the state of the congregation and their ministers. And then again, we talked about this, I just did. What would I say? I said ad limina, that's number 3. He must report to the state of the diocese to the Pope every 5 years. And this is a serious and detailed manner, and it involves a visit to the Holy See. If you want more information, you can read 399 to 400. He doesn't go over there alone. He travels with a group. I think it's Michigan and Ohio. Bishops all go together. The Pope's not gonna, I don't know how many bishops he's got in the world. Take a guess. But he's not gonna have each one just traipse over there and once every 5 years. They come as a group, they meet as a group. There might be a time when he has a private meeting, very short one, with the pontiff. They usually ask him what Kalamazoo means, and we all know that means boiling waters. Native American. All right.
Now, on 384, the last paragraph, it says, although Canon 384 does not mention deacons, it is reasonable to expect that the diocesan bishop will also care for the nurture of them and their ministry. He will also have special concern for their families if the permanent deacons are married.
Where are you reading this at?
I'm reading it at the end of Canon 384, the last paragraph,
Yeah.
before 385. Could you define what he's meaning, what he talks about there by nurturing them in their ministry and nurturing their families? I'm in the Green Book.
The Green Book, which one's that?
What's the biggest one?
Oh, you're reading the explanation.
Yes, sir.
Oh, well, what would you think nurturing would be?
I don't understand. I want to know.
Well, it could vary, you know, from diocese to diocese, but that's just saying that he doesn't want deacons out there not knowing what's going on. Okay? So as an example, we all get the B-mails that are addressed to the presbyterate. I get them, you get them, and you get them. Okay? Which tells us what's going on in the diocese. He's going to be concerned if you have personal problems. You know, I ended up at St. Ambrose in Parchment because the duties involved in being at a large inner city parish were getting too much for my physical health. So I appealed, not directly, but through the director of the diaconate to have a change of parish. Now, I didn't say which parish. Would not do that. At least that's not my style. I would say to him, you know, I need a smaller parish, one where everything isn't so big. Shoot, the gospel book at the last place I could barely drag down the aisle, let alone carry it. So he gets concerned about those things. He's concerned about family situation. Is your wife sick? I mean, it's just going to be everything that you could possibly think of.
I can tell you with Bishop Bradley, right now, he's planning on being at Deacon Mike Carl's mother's funeral. He makes personal phone calls as soon as he hears something that's happened in a family. So he is very concerned about what's going on in each deacon's lives.
I mean, I read that email every week because he tells me who's sick. And he usually say, and I'm going to visit him tomorrow, or I visited him 3 days ago or 2 days ago, especially the presbyterate, but even so the deacons. One of the deacons is sick and in the hospital. I'd be surprised if he didn't show up. So that's the kind of things that goes on. And I don't know that I didn't mean to make light of your question. There's no set things he has to do. He doesn't send me a check once a month. I'd like it, but he won't. I mean, just normal stuff. Normal human stuff. He is the pastor of the diocese in a sense. So he's got to be concerned not just with the people of his diocese, but of the people that work for him, especially in the ministerial sort of thing. I mean, you know, I don't think he's going to come into my house and paint my outside deck every spring. I'd like that too, but he's not going to do it. But he's going to make sure that, you know, he knows what's going on. I think the other thing that you might not hear about, you never hear about, is if you have a problem. You get to be an alcoholic, or you've got marital problems, or anything like that. He's going to want to know about that right away. And he's going to see to it that you get proper treatment. You think anything else, Jane? You probably know more of these than I
think
do.
he also appoints the director of deacon personnel to take care of the day-to-day stuff.
Right.
But this bishop is very pastoral and will make calls, like on our birthdays, he gives us a call. And if someone's sick, I was in the hospital, we came up and prayed.
I mean, even for me, he sent me an email and my family when my dad passed away.
Right, yeah, right. And, you know, the problem with that is I don't think that, once you're ordained anyway, I don't know how you guys are, but once we're ordained, word gets around pretty quick. I mean, I got emails from all three people that we prayed for tonight, you know, within a matter of hours. And some of them I got directly. I mean, I got the one from Janet Radford before Gene even sent it out. Gene Haas, the director of Deacon Personnel. I think I also got the one, well, I knew about Mike Carl's mother, that she was in trouble, because I had met him a week or so before. And then he called me to do Stations of the Cross for him, except unfortunately, the bishop hasn't, or has Christ bestowed on me the gift by location, so I couldn't do Stations of the Cross at 2 different churches at the same time. But if that stations had been at 5 or 5:30, I would have been there. Because that's the way the community is, you know. He happened to be both at 7. I don't know who he ended up getting.
I don't either. I know we tried Kurt too, and Kurt was sick.
Yeah, so I don't know. He was having, I don't know if it was Durda or Bob. One of the two. Bob Cragen or one of them. He had, I think it was Father Durda was looking around to see if he could find somebody to do it. And I gave him a couple of names of people that I knew might be available, who were fairly close. You know, we're not going to call a deacon from down in, you know, New Buffalo to come up to Richmond.
Yeah, do priests and deacons, are they the only ones allowed to do the Station of the Cross?
No,
Oh, okay. Because it made it sound like, wow.
no, but there was probably benediction.
Oh, okay.
And then
Yeah.
yes, I know that's not right, but you know, it's really, really hard to fight tradition. You know, parish tradition. You know, you're not supposed to have benediction with Stations of the Cross. And I said, we're not supposed to be doing this. And they said, we've always done it.
30 years.
So I just shut up and went on with it. We've always done it at this parish, I should say. All right, I hope that answers the question. That's the best that I can do. I think we're pretty much done with that section. Flipping on over, how many more pages have we got? Zillions. Article 3. I don't know why this is on this page, but it says coadjutors and auxiliary bishops are usually delegated as either as vicar general or episcopal vicars.
Where you at, Deacon?
I don't know.
403. What's that? Number 403. 403? Oh, 403.
Yeah, I guess so. That part's cut off my printing.
Okay.
And I was just looking at Article 3 there.
It's the start of Article 3, it's in full.
I'm not turning the pages in the book fast enough. Okay, we need to talk a little bit about coadjutor bishops. They're not an auxiliary bishop. And no diocesan bishop really likes having a coadjutor appointed by Rome. It's kind of like having a boss who's really not your boss, standing over you, spying on you. You get one because you have a problem. And you're usually very old. So you normally are, this is somebody who's, some bishop who's not yet 75, hasn't turned his letter in, has no desire to turn his letter in, but maybe he's getting a little dementia coming on or something. They will appoint a coadjutor to help him out. Like I said, it's not something that's loved by the bishops. I can tell you that right now. They don't want one. But sometimes Rome sees fit to do that. Sometimes it's as a way of mercy. You know, they don't want to tell this guy that, you know, he's really got to stop being the diocesan bishop, so they'll appoint somebody to help him out. And it does take off the load, and he has more authority than an auxiliary bishop. But he's usually appointed the vicar general, or one of the vicar generals for the diocese. Because why? What is a vicar general's power? Everything that is not reserved for the
bishop.
the diocesan bishop. So they can do virtually everything. Vicar generals are sometimes called the bishop's other self, because they can do everything. So the coadjutor is normally appointed as a vicar general, or if the diocese has a lot of area, they, and I can't think of one in particular, I don't know, let's say Helena, Montana. Let's say that there's where they're sitting, I don't know if this is the case, let's say that part of the diocese is on one side of the mountains and the other part is on the other side, and it's a lot of hassle for the bishop to have to travel through the mountains, especially in the winter, or fly even. They may put the coadjutor in another city just to take care of something where it would be a diverse territory. But generally, it's right there. He's, I like follow the bishop around. He gets all the information he does. I just kind of want to make that clear. So if you hear about a coadjutor, what else is really good about a coadjutor?
If the current bishop passes away, he assumes a position.
Absolutely, there's no hassling around. He's immediately the bishop. Okay? Chapter 3. Oh, yep.
I maybe we read this, and I'm going to admit now I missed it. So, if if a bishop passes away and there's a retired bishop in place, Bishop Emeritus, does that bishop take over, or does the vicar for the diocese assume control?
No.
Nothing.
No. What happens is, first of all, they're going to notify the nuncio immediately. They're going to notify Rome. Rome can appoint an administrator who could be the Bishop Emeritus, or could be any priest, provided they meet the right requirements. But the normal procedure is for the College of Consultors, they get together and they elect or appoint or agree on, whatever you want to call it, an election really, an administrator for the diocese.
We had that here, right, with Bishop Markowitz?
Yeah, it could have been. That's a little far back from my memory. It wasn't last week, but yes.
I mean, so that did happen in our diocese.
Correct.
Right, and I think before Bishop Bradley came, I think they made the administrator, the Bishop Emeritus made the administrator, if I'm not mistaken. I think so.
Murray stayed on until
Yeah, right, he stayed on. So Rome, when he sent his letter to Rome saying, hey, I'm 75, and I don't want to remain the bishop any longer than I need to, in fancy words, Rome came back and said, we'd like you to stay on until the new bishop is in place. And they did that. So the College of Consultors just sat there and twiddled their thumbs. They didn't have to do anything. I don't think they'd like to do it anyway. I was going to do it.
But isn't it if as soon as a bishop leaves or passes away, the person who was appointed as vicar general is no longer vicar general just because it was a...
That's correct, but that doesn't keep him from being appointed as the administrator of the diocese. Now, the administrator of the diocese keeps things running, but there are certain things he can't do, and there are, as we read earlier, some things after a year. Then if nothing's taken place, then he can do things that he couldn't do for the first year. It's vacant for a long time. Okay, it talks about an impeded see also, and you may want to know what that is. That's 412. Yeah, somewhere in here. Impeded see is one where the bishop is being kept from performing his duties, or he's incommunicado in some way. Can't even be reached by telephone. We don't see that too much these days. You don't kidnap a bishop, and keep him from this place. But in the Middle Ages, it was pretty popular. He didn't like it. The king didn't like what the bishop was doing. He'd send out his people to snatch him away, send him off to some island in the middle of the Aegean Sea somewhere. If he's from Paris, and he's not going to do much. That sea is impeded. So that's what it means.
Is that the reason why in our studies some bishops were exiled, but then they came back, they automatically took the diocese back?
Yeah, because they were the bishop. They're still a bishop. They just were impeded. And then the administrator, as you know, can't do much. You run things day to day. You can't make any changes to the diocese. 416 talks about the vacancies caused by death, resignation, transfer, or privation. Privation is a penalty of a delict.
What?
A delict. We'll get to that in week 7. It's a court. He committed some act that there was a penal court, a church court. We don't need to get into what it is, but you can lose your power by that. What happens if a pastor does something like embezzle money? Well, in the United States, it's pretty easy. They call the local sheriff and they arrest him for embezzlement. And he gets prosecuted civilly. The church will take action afterwards. But in some countries, it doesn't work that way. The church may have to actually convene a court and find him, guilty or innocent. He has all kinds of rights. But he could be one of those penalties of that, committing that delict, a violation of the law. Delict is a violation of the law, would be privation, loss of office.
Question, sir?
Yep.
If appropriate at this time, when the Pope wasn't in Rome anymore, just in general, how does that affect canon law? I mean, we're reading a lot about bishops, and I assume that same things here apply to the Pope, sort of when these kind of things happen, like when he dies.
Yeah, but you gotta remember this canon law wasn't in effect.
No, but some canon law was.
So what happened was
it
would be like he could be impeded, okay, because he may be held away from his see. Remember, he's just the Bishop of Rome. He has some other powers as the Supreme Pontiff, but he's the Bishop of Rome. So if he wasn't in Rome, the see wasn't vacant. He's still there, but he could have been impeded. Some German knight is holding him in his castle tower. He's not going to operate very well.
So there were things in place when that happened, or not really, and some of these things came to be because of that? A little both?
Yeah, could be. Could be. There was a lot of other problems there. There was one time when there were 3 popes. And there really wasn't, because 2 of them weren't popes. Only one of them was pope. Then they went to Avignon. I think the weather was better. It's like going to the Riviera, Who wants to hang around Rome? It's nasty and cold in the winter, and it rains in the spring. It gets hotter than heck in the summer. Why not go out to Avignon? Spend a while. Now you can read about those. It's not time for history of canon law, but canon law goes way, way back, okay? But it wasn't until the time of Raymond of Penafort, Saint Raymond of Penafort, that Gregory, I think it was, you're really pushing my memory here. History of canon law was the first class I took 14 years ago, but there was a time when they started organizing all these decrees. That's how these really got started. And then eventually we got to some other codes, earlier codes of canon law, and then in 1917 they actually finally came up with a...
So that 1917 one was really the first...
The first one, it was really printed in a really good book, yeah. Okay. There were volumes and volumes and volumes of stuff. The problem was, without being a canon lawyer at the time, you couldn't tell. You might look in 3 different places and find 3 different answers, none of which agreed with each other as to what the law was. And then eventually everything got codified. And that really happened, really the first really big one was 1917 code. Pio Benedictine code, Pius and Benedict. That time. All right, rolling right along. In 419, the College of Consultors, as we said, is to act to designate a diocesan administrator. Okay. Oh, I want to back up to 417 for just a second. You already mentioned this. Vicar generals and episcopal vicars continue to act until they receive notification of the death of the diocesan bishop. But as soon as that happens, they're done. Okay, so they can't place any acts after that. There is one person who continues to act. Who is that? Judicial vicar. Courts and canon law rolls on, whether the bishop's alive or not. He retains his office, and they continue to do what they normally do. Judicial vicar. Monsignor Thomas A. Martin, JCD. He's the rector of the cathedral currently. But he's not always been there. 423 tells us that the diocesan administrator cannot be the financial officer, so they cannot appoint that. Most of ours are civil, I think. I don't remember ever having a priest in this diocese. Could have been years ago. Diocesan administrator, we said earlier, must be at least 35 years of age. 426, Canon 426, one who is to govern a diocese before the election of the diocesan administrator has the power of the vicar general. Whatever that means. That's essentially what it says. 427. The diocesan administrator has the power of a diocesan bishop, except as by law or nature are accepted. Now, certain things in the law he cannot do. But then we know that there are things that he can do after a year that he couldn't do before that. I think that's point pastors, if I'm not mistaken. 428 says nothing is to be altered. So he can't say, oh, I don't like that decree he issued about everybody in this diocese has to not drink on St. Patrick's Day. I'm going to do away with it. You can't do that. That's a weird law. But the Italians wouldn't care, but the Irish would all be mourning in their beer as they're not drinking. All right, we're looking at Title II, groupings of particular churches. This is provinces, there's the metropolitan, there's an archbishop, and the suffragan diocese. Let's find this. I got to get to that page. I can't turn these pages fast enough. It took me a lot longer to read them the first time. 437 says that the pallium is to be requested in 3 months from when a bishop is appointed, or someone is appointed as the archbishop of as a metropolitan. You know what the pallium looks like, right? It comes around this way, comes to the middle, and goes straight down, has a bunch of crosses on it. Okay? You can, if you look at pictures of the Pope, you see them. I suppose the archbishop can wear it. I don't see them walking around with it. It's not like something they walk with on the street. I assume they'd wear it at an official liturgy of some sort. When is it conferred? No. One day a year. Only one. June 29. Feast of Peter and Paul. It's always conferred on that date. He does not have to be personally present to receive it. He can send someone. Now, if you were the archbishop and you were getting a trip to Rome, would you send, somebody to go get it for you? Probably not. but he can. We're going to look in JAC again, 88 and 89. Moving right along. It is talking about the Conference of Bishops. Which Conference of Bishops do we belong to?
USCCB, United States, USCCB.
USCCB. Right? That's the new name. It was an old name. You don't need to know it. It's the National Council of Catholic Bishops, right? NCCB, just in case you were. That wasn't, I think they changed the name simply because national could mean anybody's national. They changed it to USCCB so it's easier to recognize. You know where it is?
In Washington,
Where?
D.C., at the Nuncio, or, no, not Nuncio, it's the Archdiocese of Washington, at the D.C. Well,
You know where the Basilica is? Of the Immaculate Conception?
It's on Michigan Avenue.
Northeast Washington.
No, it's not on Michigan Avenue.
That's their address.
And maybe their address, but they're not on Michigan Avenue. Because I know it's right in front of their building, the Theological College. And right behind that, off of 4th Avenue, or Street, depending on your point of view, is the USCCB.
Yeah, but I think isn't it across the river? Remember, I drove on Michigan to get there.
May have, but I don't know how you got into their parking lot unless you went around on the 4th.
The Basilica, not the.
The Basilica's on, yes.
Yeah, that's what I.
The Basilica sits on one side, Theological College sits on the other side, and right behind it is the USCCB.
I didn't go visit them. The Basilica was way more than enough for me.
Did you go up to the John Paul Institute?
Just the Basilica.
That's just up 4th Street, behind the Basilica.
There
Nice
was like
place to visit.
30 chapels inside that thing. We didn't even get to all those darn chapels.
Did you go down to the crypt?
Yes.
That's the church that was the church before the church was built.
That was really
What did you say?
That was the church, that was a basilica before the church was built to be the church. It was in the crypt, crypt meaning basement. It was all, that's where they did masses until they got enough money to build this humongous place. And they're still building. Every time I go back, there's more marble. They cover the brick with marble. And I don't know where the money comes from. Must be from me. I must send them money.
a little bit for me.
Is the
Yeah.
earthquake damage all repaired now?
The earthquake damage was to,
Facility.
no. The earthquake damage was to the cathedral in Washington. I wasn't there when that happened. But it would have been my fault if I had been.
Just been recent, past 5 years.
Well, as I said, it wasn't my fault I wasn't there. I was out of state.
You have more power.
You still had to follow the rules somewhere, though.
Yeah, I did. I haven't gotten anything from those people anymore. I haven't been there enough. I used to always get mail from the rector, Monsignor Rossi,
Yeah.
but I haven't been there in a while, so I haven't put in any money in the collection, and they don't know who I am, I guess. They lost my name off their list. That's good. Because they would want it if they knew where I was at. All right. When are we going to get done? All right, 88 to 89, we covered that pretty well. Internal organization of the diocese. On page 89 in this book. Most of the diocesan offices are presented in the code as required. Several offices may be held by one person in small dioceses. In large dioceses, the roles may be multiple, etc. Does it get into what they are? Nah. It doesn't tell you about those now. That's good. Let's skip it. All right, moving right along. Talks about diocesan synods on page 90.
We ever had one in town do that?
They are possible, but they are not often used today.
According to, I asked Bishop Murray this question, he was in our parish yesterday, he said, never been one.
Never been one here?
Not in the United States. Very seldom, once in a great while.
In our diocese.
The last one I remember was,
Presbyterian one, but BJ held the Synod.
no, DJ did not.
Well, that's what the bishop called it.
It may have been his doings, but the bishop had to call it.
Wow.
Well, we don't, it could have been, I don't know. That's what I heard about, was we were having them in my home diocese where I was a kid, around the time of Vatican II.
And our bishop is looking at calling one. Yeah.
You better get
The
the other
diocese
stuff done
plan
first.
first.
You better get some of the other stuff done first. Chapter 2. Rolling right along. I got pages and pages to go yet, unfortunately. And most of this stuff, I do not expect you to memorize. I just want you to know that you heard about it.
It's always good.
Some of you already got it, right?
That is on tape, by the way.
Yeah, I think we turned the camera so we could get that on tape.
For pricing, he had to.
For validity, acts of the Curia, this is Diocese of Curia,
Where's that?
474. For validity. And we moved on from there.
474?
474, Canon 474. Yeah, we did. It talks about for validity, acts of the Curia, which are to have a juridic effect, must be signed by the ordinary from whom they emanate. They also must be signed by the Chancellor of the Curia or a notary. Chancellor, moreover, is bound to inform the moderator of the Curia concerning such acts. For validity, not legality, validness. That's acts of the Curia, which have a juridic effect, have some effect under the law, must be signed by the ordinary from whom they emanate. So that could be any ordinary. Could be any of the local ordinaries. Does not say diocesan bishop, notice. And they have to be, the chancellor has to notarize them, or essentially the chancellor's got to know, so they get recorded somewhere and placed in some file. You can find them later. Okay? And he's got to inform the moderator of the Curia concerning such acts. We do have two separate people. So if the chancellor knows about something, he's got to walk from his office down the hall to Monsignor's office, Monsignor Osborne, who's moderator of the Curia, and tell him that this act has taken place. Not that they don't already know it anyway, but they not. The diocesan bishop must appoint a vicar general. It's not something he can do. He must appoint one who is provided with ordinary power according to the norm of the following canons. Da, 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 da. Normally there's only one vicar general, but there can be more than one. 476 deals with the episcopal victor who has the same power as a vicar general, but only over part of the diocese or a group of persons. Where might you find that?
Seminary.
Very large city.
Yeah, Detroit. They have episcopal vicars. They're usually headed by one of the auxiliary bishops. They don't have to be, they usually are, and they have authority over that area. One of them I was talking to had the downriver area of Detroit, and somebody else was out on the far west side of the diocese, and then somebody else was up Grosse Pointe North.
would you say that some of these, you know, kind of vicars, they're kind of in line to become bishops? Like,
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. You know, that Turnus I talked about where they nominate people to be bishops, it's often very surprising when someone gets appointed to be a bishop who was a priest. And he wasn't the vicar general, and he wasn't an Episcopal vicar, and he wasn't the vicar's foreign. God moves in mysterious ways, and so does the pontiff. And all his helpers. 478 talks about vicar generals and episcopal vicars. They must be at least 30 years old. They must be what? What's it say in the Latin?
Have a doctor and
The second line.
Sacerdotes.
Sacerdotes, which means
Priests.
priest, presbyterals. Cannot be. You can't be one unless you get to be a priest, but I don't know how that's going to happen. With what was that? I missed that. Probably just as well, right? Let me grade your test before you take it. JCD, you must have either JCD, JCL, Master's or Doctorate in Theology. And it says C number 2 for some other restrictions. Okay. Oh. Can't be blood relatives of the bishop. Up to the 4th degree. That's a pretty long way down. Can't report your nephew to be your vicar general, even if he is a priest.
We're not getting back to marrying your first cousin, are we?
No, you don't do that. This is not Tennessee or Kentucky.
Now, back in history, you can see that this comes from problems they had.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in the Middle Ages.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Well, I was going to say something a little more gross, but it can't be his son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, that probably happened in those.
Oh, that happened a lot. Vicar General has executive power over the whole diocese. Well, we said it earlier. The Episcopal Vicar is limited to the part of the diocese or to groups of persons. You could be the Episcopal Vicar for, gosh, I don't know, a group of people in the diocese. Maybe there's,
Vietnamese Catholics.
yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's a little more complicated. Yeah. I'm still here.
Were you asking or were you? Oh, okay, we're helping me.
Helping.
When Monsignor Osborne was named Vicar General, isn't that what he was, right? What's his name?
He's the moderator of the Curia right now.
He is partial, but,
And he is a Vicar General.
Okay, because Monsignor Hazard. So you can have two? Or,
Yeah.
Okay,
He can have as many as he wants.
okay.
Normally there's only one, but he can have as many as he wants. Why would that be?
I don't know.
Well, what do they have to do? You can't get the bishop because he's on vacation in Jamaica.
For less than a month?
Areas of expertise?
And you need a dispensation. You poor deacon need a dispensation for disparity of cult. The bride and groom are standing in front of you. Oh, by the way, I'm not Catholic. I've never been baptized. I'm Muslim. You going to call the bishop in Jamaica? He's got his cell phone turned on. Who you looking for? The judicial, not the judicial, the vicar general. So you might want to have two. Because Monsignor Osborne is out on the golf course somewhere and he's got his cell phone turned off. And you're the one holding the bag. You're trying to get a hold of it to get a dispensation. Okay, it says C 480 underlined. Is yours underlined? Oh, it's underlined on mine. This is page 157 in the brown book. Last line of 480. They are never to act contrary to the intention and mind of the diocesan bishop. So just because they have the authority, they can't go out on some wild goose chase somewhere. They got to follow what they know to be his mind. How do they know his mind? Because their offices are about 5 feet from his door. And they see him a lot. Who doesn't see him a lot? I don't see him at all, unless it's for Mass. I don't have any reason to see him. Besides, he has a very good messenger. Lexi, the Bishop's Secretary. Canons 481, Vicar General and Episcopal Vicar cease at the end of the time of the mandate that they were appointed under, resignation and removal, and at the vacancy of the episcopal see. So they get a mandate. It's in writing. They just don't become the Vicar General. It has to be in writing. It may say, you are Vicar General for the next 5 years. At the end of the 5 years, they're no longer the Vicar General. They could also resign from that position. They could have it removed, or the see could become vacant. Article 2.
So in other words, if the bishop gets in trouble, gets suspended, they also get suspended.
No. Vacancy of the see. The bishop doesn't get suspended. Where are you at?
Green book.
No, what canon?
Big fat green book.
481?
481.
Yeah.
2.
Article 2. When the function of the diocesan bishop is suspended,
Power of the Vicar General.
Okay. I'll take that. That sounds good. I don't know how a bishop gets suspended unless it were for the deal that I talked about earlier. Committing a violation of Canon Law, which would require us them to be suspended.
It might be that last paragraph of the commentary is differentiating between non-bishop vicars and bishop vicars.
Mm-hmm. Could be.
Because the bishop vicars, it says, even during suspension of the diocesan bishop, they keep their stuff. Or keep their...
Yeah, because that's the last line of this. It says,
Yeah.
they are, the Episcopal Vicar is suspended, Vicar General and Episcopal Vicar is suspended also unless they are bishops.
Right.
So they must have put it in there just because some are bishops and some aren't.
Yep. Could be.
Legal stuff.
Sounds good to me.
I don't know how you get through this. This drives me nuts.
Because what we're doing in one night here, I spent several semesters going over this with a fine-tooth comb. And then you know what you do? You forget only that part which you don't need. You do need.
So we go back to this one. What?
You forget everything that you don't use.
Clear.
Because why? What happens if you don't? There's only so much space up here, and I am not going to forget my grandson's birthday over some canon that I will never ever touch. I know where it is. That's why we get this big brown book and the big green book that's in my briefcase. Notice how often I take it out. All right. Chancellor acts, keeps the acts of the diocesan curia. Other notaries can be appointed. When would you think another notary might be appointed? Who produces a lot of documents within the diocesan operations? Don't say Deacon Kurt's operation, that's not it. The marriage tribunal, we have our own notary. Because otherwise, the chancellor would take us out and shoot us. I sign documents like they're going out of style, and they all have to be notarized. The notary signs, there's a notary assigned. Sometimes there's two. Big dioceses have tons of notaries running around. Okay? They're just verifying that it was an official act and that I really did sign the document. Also, there are times when the notary must be a priest for matters that would involve a priest. Okay? That's why, let's say the priest is up on some charges. The notary for that particular canonical action would have to be a priest. It's kind of nice because if a priest commits a delict against the 6th or 9th commandment, which would involve sexual abuse of a minor, guess who won't be the notary or the promoter of justice? Because it's got to be at least a priest. So there isn't one. Well, right now there is, but there was a time when I was promoter of justice. I knew that if that happened, they were going to appoint a promoter of justice ad hoc who would be a priest. And I would just merely become his gopher. Go for this, go for that, go for coffee. Find this in the canon law, do this, do that. But I would not be the one sitting in the operations having to verify all that crap. I didn't say that. 44 deals with the duties of a notary. Know where they are. 49 deals with the secret archives. No, I don't know where they are. I've never seen them. And I can't open them, and I don't want to have to open them.
Do we have like a secret safe that only the bishop can? Like,
Yep. Is that what it says? Did you read that?
Only the bishop is to have a key to the secret archive, like a secret safe.
Mm-hmm. I could imagine that over the last 30-some years, there might be at least one marriage case in the secret archive. Because they don't want all that information out. And only the bishop has the key to the secret archives. The finance council and the finance officer presides, the finance officer, and 3 members of the Christian faithful make up the council. Who do you think would be on the diocesan financial council? Does it give the requirements on it? I think it does.
You have a lay person.
They're usually a layperson. At least 3 members of the Christian faithful, truly expert in financial affairs and civil law, outstanding in integrity, and most important of all, appointed by the bishop. Didn't say by his vicar. Okay? The bishop's also a member of that, by the way, just in case you're wondering. Presbyteral Council and College of Consultors is covered here. It's kind of like a senate for the bishop. The Presbyteral Council, it's his advisors. I think doesn't he have 12? Isn't that, do you know, John? Does he have 12 priests on his Presbyteral Council?
Quite a few, I don't know.
Yeah, there's quite a few. Presbyteral Council is much larger than the College of Consultors. College of Consultors usually, I think it has to be at least 6. I mean, they're kind of like advisors. It's kind of like a parish council for the bishop. Although he does have one of those too. He has a pastoral council.
Yeah, and some of them cross over.
Yeah, they can cross over. Yes. Just because you're on one doesn't mean you're on the other. It's not like an elite group of the Presbyteral Council gets to be part of the College of Consultors. What's the primary duty of the College of Consultors?
To consult.
No. Well, he could be. They like who? The diocesan administrator, if the see is vacant. There is a pastoral council. Oh yeah, by the way, Presbyteral Council cannot act without the diocesan bishop, just in case you were wondering. Chapter 5. I must have skipped chapter 4. I must have been reading. Oh yeah, chapters of canons. That's a really good one. Read up all on that because that's a strictly European deal. and there's still a few around, but they're fading quickly. They were kind of like the elite priest that appointed to the chapter of canons. And in some areas, they could actually elect the bishop, the next bishop. I didn't say appoint, it said elect. There are still some elected bishops in the world, but they still have to have approval of Rome, so they can elect whoever they want. If Rome don't like it, it ain't going nowhere. Pastoral council, which we have one, is covered in chapter 5. Oh, man. Chapter 6. This might be of more interest. Gotta find it. Maybe I don't. Oh, yes, I do. Okay, it starts on page 168 in Canon 515. Parish is a community of Christian faithful, stably constituted in a particular church whose pastoral care is entrusted to the pastor, parochius, and his proper pastor under the authority of the diocesan bishop. Only the diocesan bishop is to suppress, erect, or alter parishes. A legitimately erected parish possesses juridic personality by the law itself. Unless the law provides otherwise, a quasi-parish is equivalent to a parish. (517.2). Have you heard that before? 517.2. If, because of the lack of priest, a diocesan bishop has decided that participation in the exercise of pastoral care of a parish is to be entrusted to a deacon, to another person who is not a priest, or to a community of persons, he is to appoint some priest who is to provide with the power and the faculties of a pastor, is to direct pastoral care. Where's the name? There isn't one. I have one, 517.2, because then I know what they're talking about. I'm not going to call it a parish administrator or pastoral administrator, because all those things just get confusing, especially the canon lawyers. Okay, you may end up with one of those before you even know it. One of the guys in my class was not even ordained before he was a 517.2. Frank. They were out, they needed one, he was close. He was in his last year, you're it, and by the way, we're going to ordain you when we get there. And they did. So don't expect a call tomorrow, but don't be surprised if somebody gets one at some point. (520) talks about parishes can be entrusted to a clerical religious institute or clerical society of apostolic life. It talks about pastors in solidium. I don't think we're going to have a problem with that. That's where 2 pastors are appointed to, or more, to oversee one parish. They act as a group. One of them has to be the moderator. We don't have those. We have one big priest with multiple parishes, but that's the other way around. Break time. Is your brain frizzled and fried? If it's not, we aren't doing something right.
Trust me, you're doing it right.
Yeah, I thought so.
As soon as we opened the book.